Hello, this is Jonathan Scott. Good morning. Welcome to John's D&D vlog episode number 30. Today we're going to talk about G1, Steading of the Hill Giant Chief. After Keep on the Borderlands, this is probably the next most famous module. As usual, as always with these module reviews that I do, please, if you're a player, don't watch this because I'm going to be giving away stuff that will make your experience less fun. So please don't watch this episode any further if you're a player. So this is G1 Steading of the Hill Giant Chief. It's the first module in the GDQ 1-7 series, the one that takes you all the way from the Steading of the Hill Giant Chief all the way up to Queen of the Demon Web Pits. Because this place is just a big wooden fortress, right? I've been in this module 3 different times. I ran it twice, and then when I was a kid, I was just a player, right? So what happened each and every time that we went into this place, and when my players went in later, they burned the place down each and every time. So therefore, no experience, no treasure, no nothing. And the module's all done. I'll tell you what I can about the module, but you got to realize every time I've been through it, I've had kind of a limited experience. So anyway, I'll tell you what I've gone through, and then my own personal advice for running the place. So as I've said before, this is part of one of my progressions. I go from Temple of Elemental Evil through Terrible Trouble at Tragedor and then on to GDQ 1-7, right? So this is going to be the module that occurs right after Terrible Trouble at Tragedor. So to kind of make the segue between the two modules, in Terrible Trouble at Tragedor, I put in 3 hill giants and 1 stone giant. The premise of it all being that the 3 hill giants are being punished, right? So they're sending them off to work in a mine to help out the drow. And the stone giant is kind of like their jailer. So when they're finishing up Terrible Trouble at Tragedor, they'll find a map that has a basic location, that gives basic directions on how to get to the Steading. And then there will be a note on the map said, bring them to the mines and then come back. You know, something simple like that, but written in giant. So that's how I do it, right? And then I always have it take 20 days for them to get to the Steading because the Steading is very far away. And when I do it, I have them roll random encounters every day, right? And if they ever come up with a random encounter, it's always going to be a troop of 50 giants heading south. They're heading towards Tragedor, but where they're actually heading is the main city of Eastbrook. And 50 giants is too many for a party to handle themselves, right? So if they're wise, they let them walk by. But otherwise, if they want to fight them, go ahead, give them a try. It should be a group of giants sufficiently strong. The party couldn't take them if they wanted to. So some people want to go back to Tragedor to protect the city. Some people want to follow them all the way back to the main city where your campaign's centered. Some people, I mean, there's a million different ways that they'll respond to that. And then this is where you do the gaming that occurs outside of the module, which makes the module much more deeper and much more interesting. It turns a module into more than just a map full of monsters for your players to kill and actually turns it into a very intriguing storyline. But anyway, all the random encounters are going to be these big, huge groups of giants heading south, right? And then once they get to the Steading, then you just start the module as always. And the giants that are in the Steading are the current forces that are currently being amassed that they're going to send south down to the main city to attack it. All the giants will get to the Steading via the transportation device that's found in second floor in room number 33. So the guy who's in charge of the Steading, Chief Nosnera, he will from time to time use that teleportation device to bring new giants to his Steading. And then it's a staging point. This Steading is a staging point for all of the future invasion attempts that will be occurring to the south. So anyway, that's how I deal with getting the players in the front door, right? From the previous module, which for me is Terrible Trouble at Tragedor, into the front door. So from here on out, I'm just going to tell you some more stories. I've been through it 3 times. They all ended the same with a big fire, but other stuff happened before then and after. But nonetheless, here's what happened. When I was a kid, we went through this module, and no one really knew what they were doing. We were just having fun, right? So we went in the front door and we killed the two sleeping guards. And then I don't know how we found out about it, but we walked around and we found out about the big, huge group of giants in the big main room. And then we tried a sideways entrance, and then we found all the dogs, and we were able to kill all the dire wolves. And then I just asked, the dungeon master, can we just burn the place down? And he said, yeah, sure. And then that was it. That was the end of it. The second time I went through, the guys were able to get through, and they did the same thing. They did a few fights, and then they looked at what was happening in the main room. They were able to get in somehow without being seen and find out what was happening in there. So they were a little bit more intelligent. It was adults that were doing it, right? So they set several fires right by where all the doors were. And the fires were big enough so that when the giants finally found out about them, it was too much heat and they couldn't escape, right? So I had the top level only burned to the ground, right? And when they went back, they were able to find the stairs, and they went down into the second floor for a little while. But then they got bored, and then that campaign died. Some new players just can't handle the whole idea of looking for secret doors. Yeah, I tried to make it not painful for them, but they just couldn't figure it out, The door here, if you can't find it, you're never going to find the teleportation device, right? So he needed to find it, and they gave up before they could find it, which was too bad. The third time I went through, I rolled for a random encounter, and it said that a cloud giant was walking through the hallways. And the players knew enough that in the monster manual it said that cloud giants were chaotic good, right? So they assumed that this one particular cloud giant must have been charmed or something to be in this room hanging out with all these evil giants, right? So they looked at him and said, hey, are you okay? Is everything fine? And then, of course, the cloud giant ran back inside, got everybody. And the party was just completely swarmed by all these giants from all sides. There was no way for them to escape. Anyway, they just happened to have a ring of one wish on them. And they wished, and this was kind of funny, they wished that they would go to wherever a Klavdra was. The map that they had found had been signed by a Klavdra. That was the name that they remembered. So I brought them all the way to G3, right? Hall of the Fire Giant King. So they completely skipped over most of G1 and all of G2. And now they're in a module that's way over their heads. So I'm curious to see what's going to happen to them now. As far as tips and tricks go, you got to realize every bit of advice I'm going to give you right now is completely untested. I've never used any of it in the actual running of the game because everybody keeps burning the building down. So this is my advice, but just realize it might be shaky. So things you might want to be on the lookout for, right? So here they've got 4 insane manticores, and here one of the prisoners is also crazy. To help the story out, I always found it to be really helpful if you can figure out what kind of insanity you're dealing with. Don't just call them crazy, but see if you can figure out how they are crazy. One way you might want to do that is to look at your Dungeon Master's Guide. If you're using first edition, it's here on page 100. Down here, it gives general traits, general tendencies of a personality, right? So if you want to have them be crazy, then you would just choose one of these, but then have them be too much of that, right? Or not enough of it. I don't know. But my personal opinion is that the situation that they're currently in is probably the reason for their insanity, so you should somehow sculpt their current mental state to fit their situation, but also maybe one of these. I don't know. Dealing with crazy people is a little bit hard because, A, if you're not crazy, you don't really know what it feels like. So to do it believably, it's hard. Anyway, then if you got the second edition Dungeon Master's Guide, it's here on page 114 and 115. It's if you deal with it right, it can make the story a lot more fun. And if you just say, oh, he's crazy, then I don't know, it tends to make the story pretty weak. The other thing I would consider warning you about is up here in the cavern of the carrion crawlers. Basically in it, it says you'll find potentially one random anything on that floor. The cavern crawler or the carrion crawlers keep going out and finding victims and then dragging them back to their lair, eating them. So you've got this whole cavern full of stuff, right? Theoretically, there could be anything there. I mean, if you use those tables religiously as it's printed in the novel or in the module, I mean, there could be artifacts in there. There could be a +5 sword sitting there lying on the floor. So, it's really hard to know how much this whole module is going to be worth in terms of XP because you don't know what's going to be here, right? It could be anything. And then the potential for abuse is so big. I don't know. They're on their way to go kill Lolth, so maybe it's a good time to let them have whatever they find. Anyway, like I said, it's an interesting module, but just because it's a big, huge wooden building and the threat inside is so great, the temptation to burn the place to the ground, the third group did that, by the way. They did a few fireballs. Anyway, the temptation to burn this place to the ground is just so great, and it's so easy, I've found it hard to finish the module, you know? Anyway, good luck. Have a good time. I hope you have fun with it. See what you can do. Maybe you can find a way to get them to go all the way to the end. So far, I haven't had that kind of luck. Anyway, thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Have a nice day.